Hello my friends and welcome back to Italy a Place to Love channel. Now, today I'm going to talk about driving in Italy. This is a very hot topic because I remember the discussions with my friends in Ireland, in UK, talking about how the Italians are bad drivers. Now, I have to say that partially is true, partially is not true. So for me, it depends by your own experience. So if you have been in Italy and you've been driving here, you probably can say many bad things, probably. But anyway, let's discover together. Let's discover together the good and the bad about driving in Italy. Obviously, I'm reporting my experience, but I'll try to be as more objective as possible, honest, trying to say where do I agree with my friends who were complaining and where I disagree with my friends who were complaining. That were always complaining about the Italian drivers. Yeah, mad Italian drivers. No, I'm joking. Let's see, step by step. I took a few notes here. I wrote down a few notes just anyway, to follow a kind of guideline because anyway, it's important for me to check step by step what my considerations are. So, first of all, but I already introduced this, and this about the stereotypes. Now, I know Italy has a very bad reputation for about the drivers, and technically, I have to agree. I mean, these stereotypes exist for real, but generally, I have to say that everywhere I've been, I let me say, I noticed some good behavior and some bad behavior. For example, I can say that when I was driving in Holland, generally Dutch people are very respectful, also Germans are very respectful, but in UK and in Ireland, I found 50-50. I mean, I found some people very respectful. Anyway, I really enjoyed, for example, driving in Ireland. And now I'm opening the second point about driving. Now, coming from a left-hand driving country, now because I've been living for 17 years in Ireland, so I've been driving for all these years in Ireland. And okay, because Ireland and UK are right-hand driving countries, what happened? So I was a left-hand driving here in Italy. Then I switched to right-hand driving. Then I get used to drive on the right side of the car. And then what was happening? That each time I was coming to Italy, maybe on holiday or to visit my parents, I had the problem that I had to switch again to the left-hand driving. And because I don't consider myself one of the best driver, uh, basically I was actually avoiding to drive in Italy each time I was coming here on holiday or to visit my parents. I was simply avoiding. Each time I was so afraid about driving. I don't know why, but these are my personal fears. So that I was used to drive on the right hand side, and so. But then anyway, I had to break this fear, and in particular now that I came back. But again, driving for me now to drive back here in Italy, it's something that I took it very slow from the very first day, short distance, just to get used to drive on the left hand side of the car. And anyway, there are things that I really like about Ireland, for example, and UK. I always found the drivers very polite. Anyway, they're very polite. Anyway, in particular in the city, when you're driving in the city, I never experienced bad driving from other drivers. That made me feel comfortable, because I'm also driving in this way, you know, that if I see someone in a difficult situation, I always help, try to help, I stop. So it's nice to do this. So about my fears, then anyway, I had to come back here and get used to drive again here. Um, yeah, so personally, I drive very slow. I generally never speed over the limits. Now, if it's written 50 kilometers per hour, I generally drive at 50, maximum 55. Not because I'm afraid of the fines that here in Italy is very common. I mean, this is a tragedy for all the drivers because they all get fined badly. But if they go over the limits, if they speed with their cars, I mean, for me it's actually good. Even if I know people are not happy to be constantly fined, then there are some tricky cameras, maybe where they put in a place where you could speed a bit faster, and then that is fooling the driver. So that is cheeky, eh? There is a kind of cheekiness in the institution here to put some speed limits, check, some cameras, let me say, to just to make fines, and that I'm against that. Then what else I want to say? City and towns are generally very chaotic. Now, these okay, in every city you have traffic. The bigger the city, the more the traffic. But because now, for example, I'm not living in a big city, and I'm living in a town that is only 1,000 inhabitants. When I do shopping, I go in a town that maybe is 10,000 inhabitants or maximum 20,000. In these type of towns that goes from 5k inhabitants to maybe 50,000 inhabitants, these are even more chaotic than the cities, because cities anyway they have their own structure, so you can't overtake, so it's more, let me say, cities are more controlled, the roads are better shaped, let me say. But in the towns, and in particular in the small towns, now it seems like everyone do whatever they want. Simply, I don't see a rule here when they're driving. They park madly. I have to agree for it, but this is in the small towns. So in the small towns, you see more the behavior like do whatever you want. But what was the good thing that I noticed, for example, even in the small towns, even in towns that are small but chaotic during the daytimes, for example, that anyway, there are the zebras. The zebras is where the people can walk through to across the road. So zebras are everywhere. I've noticed that drivers stop practically to all the zebras. So now each time I'm walking and I'm approaching the zebras, I notice that the driver stopped. They are afraid to hit someone, let me say, on the zebras, because then they can be fined. They have to pay if someone hurt himself, so insurance is problem. So I noticed that in the last 20, 30 years, maybe 30 years ago when I took the driving license, nobody used to stop at the zebras. Simply nobody. Who fucking cares? Sorry, I said a bad word. Who cares? I remember even me as a driver, my first experience 26, 27 years ago. I mean, the pedestrian is waiting, is gonna wait. Not me. I pass, and when there are no cars, you pedestrian, you're passing. Totally mad. But this, I repeat, was 30 years ago. Now, this is changing, thankfully. So I'm really glad that at least this is something that all the drivers are following. And even in the most chaotic town, in particular here in the south, where there's less law, not no low, but less low than in the north of Italy, I noticed, and I have to give a good point to this. Then, um, even if the small towns are very chaotic, let me say what I noticed, and that all the drivers are driving very slow. So, in the towns, you don't see anyone overspeeding, at least it's someone with some mental problems, and unfortunately, but these I notice everywhere. I saw people overspeeding in all the countries. If someone is so confident and wants to show his fast car and is the best on the planet, generally they do fast driving. But here, even in the small towns, for example, here where I live, I noticed that no one is driving over 30 kilometers per hour, even if there's no speed limit, about 30, maybe 50. But I noticed that everyone is driving very slow in the towns. The problem starts when people are driving out of the town. Now, when I go from where I am to another town, you have 20 kilometers out from the towns, a secondary road. Now, let me say, over there, everyone is overspeeding. I don't like that. Now, there are speed limits, could be 70, 80, 90 kilometers per hour. I mean, what's the problem? Stay in that speed limits. I mean, 70 kilometers an hour for me is already a lot. Then if it takes me 2 minutes longer to arrive to the place where I have to arrive, I don't know, it doesn't make any difference. Maybe because I don't feel any pressure in my life. I'm generally relaxed. I say, okay, I want to drive comfortable and not have to look at every single corner, because anyway, for example, there could be animals passing the roads, crossing the road. Here it's full of wild boars everywhere, for example. Be careful, because from a field could appear, and the incidents here with wild animals, I mean, are renowned. It happens, not very, very often, but it happens, and then, anyway, it's always good if nobody hurts and nobody cause damages. Okay, so I didn't like this, that people are driving faster, and they drive faster because there are no cameras, there are no checkpoints. So basically, these allow them to, they enjoy. I understand that people maybe enjoy driving their new car at a good speed limit, but always think that there are other people on the road. So, and for example, I never overtake anyone. Okay, just in case there is a tractor, but always extremely, extremely careful. Sometimes the roads are narrow, so to pay a bit of attention is always, always good. Okay, and this is about the secondary roads out of the towns. What else I can say? Let me spend a few words about the motorways. I consider in Italy the motorways are very, very good, but they are expensive. I consider them quite expensive comparing to other motorways in other countries. Then it depends where, for example, there are some motorways that are more expensive than other, maybe because they already paid back the construction of that, so they can drop the price. Other, maybe they are newly constructed, and so they still have to cover the expenses to build that motorway. Anyway, some are completely mad. The most expensive, I think, is l'Autostrada dei Fiori, because in Italy we give a name to each motorway, l'Adriatica and whatever. But l'Autostrada dei Fiori, that is in Liguria. Now, Liguria is the region that has the border, tiny border with France and with Piemonte region. It's a beautiful region. I have to talk about Liguria, but it's mad expensive. The motorway of the flowers, that's what it's called, the translation of Autostrada dei Fiori. So, motorways are expensive, and generally people are following the speed limits because they put tutors. Now they can calculate your speed from one tutor to another, And again, drivers are very afraid of the fines, but I'm happy with that. And the speed limit is 130 kilometers per hour. For me, is already a fast driving, 130. For me, once I'm driving at 110 kilometers per hour on the motorway, I'm already happy enough. Speed limits are severe, in particular on the motorways, okay, because there are the tutors. Then the motorways, for example, are well kept and are always in a good condition, so it's always a pleasure to drive on the motorways. Sometimes if you go on a motorways in the mountains, you might find a lot of turns, galleries, bridges, so that would make it maybe drive slow when you, but there are the speed limits, maybe they drop to 90 kilometers per hour, because in some places, for example, when you're driving on the motorways in the mountains, really you can find very turns that are very sharp, so always be careful, in particular when you have a motorway like in Emilia Romagna. It's a region between the north and the center of Italy. The motorways are all straight, three lanes. Let me say, there you could speed even at 200 kilometers per hour, but obviously there are the speed limits. So, but if it's all straight, keep driving. I mean, it's not a problem. But if you have a lot of turns and bends, be careful. So, what I'm complaining are the secondary roads, not the motorways. The conditions sometimes are awful, very awful here in the area. Lot of holes, so you always have to be a bit careful. I keep, maybe because I don't have a very good car, so, and you can feel every hole. So I generally drive slow as well for this reason, because they don't keep the road in a very good condition. That is a pity, that is a pity. In Spain they have much better roads, much better roads than in Italy. And here in the south of Italy is even worse than the north, so it's a pity, it's such a pity. I dislike this, but what can I do? I hope they're gonna remake all the roads new. But there are some secondary roads, let me say, that are quite important, so they're well kept. But some of them are a tragedy, in particular if there are small roads between a town to another. So, and then buses are driving. So this is always complicated. Roads are narrow, again, where secondary roads are narrow, so always be careful. So now I'm at the conclusion of the video. What I want to say, overall, I have no big complaints about driving in Italy. I said what the good things and the bad things. Obviously, things can always be better than they are, and I really wish Italy is going to improve the roads, because it's also about the safety. So anyway, you can prevent problems by driving slow. I don't want to promote slow driving, but I'm in favor of slow driving. So if they put restrictions, if they put tutors, cameras, whatever, I can only be in favor. I know many drivers might disagree with me, but this is my personal philosophy about driving. So let me spend 2 words about the transportation system. Again, Italy, for me, and in the south of Italy even more, is a country that you really need a car. Again, you have two typology of houses. You might have a house in a town, so if you have the house in a town, you can find some buses transportation. Then if you have a railway, you can even use the railway, but this is always if you're living in a town if you're living in a town. If you're living in the outskirts of the town, let me say 1, 2, 5 kilometers away from the town, but this is everywhere. I mean, in Germany, UK, not always you have a bus from in the middle of the fields where you have your own beautiful house, and then expecting to have a bus that is gonna stop just in front of your house. So that is not gonna happen. So generally, the wealthy people here are living out from the city, out from the towns, because they can afford to use the car more often. Generally, people who are not driving, anyway, they have to live in the towns, but the transportation system is not it's not the best, okay, but it's not that bad. For example, anyway, from Montemilone is well commuted by bus. I see many buses now. I never took a bus personally myself that goes from one town to another, but there are maybe 3 buses a day that go to one destination, two buses a day that go to another. I'd say that there are maybe 5, 6 destinations from Montemilone to other towns. The problem is that they keep cutting because maybe the budgets are not that big, and so I remember in my childhood, if I was coming to the south of Italy, there was a bus bringing me straight away from Torino to Montemilone, for example, when I visited my grandparents. Now they canceled that, so now I have to take a bus from Montemilone to Venosa, that is the nearest town, or to Cerignola, or to other bigger towns around, and from there I can take a bus. So it's always a bit complicated. I remember once, just tell you this episode, once it took me 12 hours by bus to go from Vieste, that is in Apulia, in Gargano Peninsula. If you check, there is a town, beautiful town called Vieste. I went over there on holiday. Then I decided, this was more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago, then I decided to came to visit my grandparents here, and so I took the bus from Vieste, so I had to do Vieste-Foggia. Then from Foggia I took a train, Foggia-Melfi. Then from Melfi I had to take one bus, Melfi-Venosa, and then arrived in Venosa I had to take another bus, Venosa Montemilone. I'm talking about 200 kilometers, maybe even less. It was 180, 170 kilometers. It might take 3 hours by car, simply because once you are in Gargano Peninsula, there are a lot of turns that might slow down the journey. But once you're out of the peninsula, the Gargano Peninsula, you're already entering the mainland, in the southern Italian mainland. So then from Foggia it takes 40 minutes to drive Foggia Montemilone, 50 minutes maybe, less than 1 hour. Foggia is already a big town in Apulia region. It's the northern town, northern city that is also a province, because Gargano is in Foggia province, Vieste was in Foggia province. Anyway, that experience was shocking, but there was this train from Foggia to Melfi that took 2 hours. Was such a slow train, was going 50 kilometers per hour, but that was an amazing experience. That is an experience that by train many tourists should take. So to take these small trains that go from one town to another, in particular when they cross the hills, the mountains and the valleys, it's simply amazing. You see, it seems to be like in a movie, beautiful scenarios. And that is an experience that I want to take, just to go maybe from one place to another by train, spending 1 day over there and then coming back. These trains are so slow because the hills, the valleys, the mountains, but these are beautiful experiences because they bring you into lands that you don't even think exist, because generally when you drive on the roads you always see only what is on the road, but then you don't see around what is behind the valley where maybe the train is passing by. So that is amazing. Okay, my friends, after this video, after all, I can say that I'm 50-50, a bit positive and a bit negative, and things can always be better, always, in particular in Italy. There's a lot to do and there's a lot to improve. Okay, my friends, after all, I wish you a lovely day, and to the next video, my friends. From Italy, a place to love. Bye!